Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the potential of another lockout in the MLB and how much we do not want it, but it seems it is very possible. We got the boys with us today. Everybody's here. Will, John, Bobby. How's everybody doing?
Well,
We surviving this long off season?
nope.
Okay.
As we discussed in our previous episode, no.
No,
As a
we're
matter
not.
of fact, we're hating it right now.
We are hating it. Before we get into the episode, though, wanted to let you guys know about something we have coming up. We call it Around the League in 30 Days. I nailed that, John, didn't I? I absolutely nailed that title.
You actually did. That was the first time.
That was his
I
first
tip
take.
my cap to you, Tyler.
Thank you. And what that means, we got 30 team previews coming to you for every MLB team from February 24th up until, when was it? March 26th, I think? Something.
Whatever, 2 days before the regular season.
Whatever.
Till opening day.
No, close enough. Close enough to opening day. So make sure you subscribe for that, because that is going to be a content grind, baby. 30 days of content for you guys going into opening day.
If you don't hate us now, you will after this.
Yeah, if you hate seeing our face now, you're not gonna like this at all.
You're gonna become a Spotify listener by the time we're done.
So
we're gonna mess up our algorithm real good.
So yeah, that is what we have on that. Make sure you check out that. And then right into the baseball season. But now we talk about the MLB lockout that could be happening after the CBA expires. This all started, by the way, and I do not know the user at all. It was like something random I seen on Twitter. X, excuse me. But
don't give Elon a satisfaction.
Twitter, yes. Twitter. Somebody was like, you guys are not going to be prepared for the long lockout we're about to have once the CBA expires after 2026. And I was like, yeah, like we've had some lockouts in baseball, like, whatever. This could be like, this feels like the lockout that could last the longest, just because what is happening right now.
Well, I have a quick thing just to put in there. This lockout is probably going to revolve around the same thing that happened in the 94-95 lockout, which was really a salary cap discussion. And that lockout, of course, was over 230 days, and the World Series was canceled. Do you think it would surpass that?
Oy.
I think.
Why did you speak that into existence?
Because I did my research for this episode.
I think if there was ever a time period with the state of baseball right now, unfortunately, I hate saying this, but I feel like this could be the longest lockout we've seen.
How long officially was
in history or since
lockout?
94?
What's the longest in history?
Since 94.
You're the historian. John, Bobby, bring out the filter. Go, John, historian.
He looks shell shocked. So
you mentioned the longest and said it wasn't 94. There we go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at the 1994 World Series of Baseball, and it doesn't exist. It's gone. It's all gone. Baseball's dead. You have fans holding up signs that say the players are greedy, the owners are greedy. There's also the ones that are rooting for Cal Ripken's streak to continue here in 1995. As we look to greener pastures ahead, clearly baseball does not rest in peace.
I think the tape is dying there. It's slowing down, bud.
Wow.
By the way, look.
It is 94-95. I looked quickly. That is the longest lockout.
It is.
in MLB history.
I just looked too. I could see this being a full year, if not even a little bit more. I do. The state of
really.
I do. I really do. The state of baseball right now, and there's a lot of trouble.
I guess here's the thing. If we're gonna say what that we think it could be a year, now the question becomes, what will drive it to taking that long? Like, what is it? Is it simply just going to be that a good chunk of the owners are going to be fighting enough against the Players Association to have a cap, and just there's no like middle ground, or like what? There has to be some stubbornness somewhere where someone just, no matter what this argument is, cannot budge from their position. And I'm just like, I'm not necessarily saying you're wrong, even though I really want to say you're wrong. I'm just trying to figure out, like,
I'm not saying
how
you're wrong,
would this happen?
But
like, how is it gonna? What's going to cause it to?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a salary cap, salary floor, salary. What did I just say? Salary floor thing.
You having a stroke?
Yes, but
okay. I'm gonna call the police.
So we were in the previous episode, Bobby had mentioned, like, yeah, it's usually one thing, right? And I think there will be a one thing. I just feel like money, and obviously money in general is the main thing, but like there's teams. I think it just gotten out of hand, like with just money in general, like with how much is being like, players are now asking for. Um, what's happening where some teams are spending, some teams aren't. I think the big thing is going to be the deferred contracts. I think that's going to definitely come up. So I don't know. I mean, bad answer, but I do feel like this feels like a culmination of a lot of different money issues that is happening right now. That might just come together and start a issue.
So there's 3 different money issues that I saw that could potentially be mentioned during the next bargaining agreement. And you mentioned the big 2 potentially deferrals and whether or not there is a salary cap / floor put in place. The other is that apparently there's going to be some there's 2/3 of teams that after the 2025 season will have witnessed or have at that point some type of a decent budget cut.
Yeah.
So revenue sharing is going to be a big thing that's going to be brought up about how that can change so that more teams can get more. And I mean, obviously, if they go in the direction of a salary cap, that's going to be what happens. It's going to be salary revenue that helps divvy that up and help make it possible and stuff. But I don't know, maybe that'll be the middle ground where the Players Association will not want that salary cap, but something to do with, I guess, revenue sharing. But I don't really know. Are they fighting against themselves from revenue sharing standpoint on what to do? Because what would the players really argue about in favor of that? Like, it's really just the owners have to argue about sharing amongst themselves.
Right. I don't know. And again, I just feel like we've lost some control again, like overall. And that's why I think that this might have the potential to stretch out, because it's just kind of amongst other things. Again, like the deferrals, this team is spending, and I know this isn't really a lockout thing, but I think like maybe the players are, I don't know. The fact that some teams refuse to spend money.
I think that's the biggest issue from the players' perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's some
they love the Dodgers, they love the Mets because they're throwing money at their problems, whereas you have teams like the Pirates and Orioles, and small market teams, just off the top of my head, that are not spending money, and that's just the unfortunate side of this because they can't. This isn't like football where everybody is on national TV and it's all syndicated depending on your area, where that revenue sharing automatically comes in. It all comes down to these TV deals and their market size based on those TV deals.
And God bless their soul, the Athletics, like, they had to spend money this offseason because they haven't spent it in God knows how long. And the funny thing is, their team's looking a lot better than it did last year. What happens when you spend money?
Pirates, look what happens when you spend money.
Right. So, I just feel like that's going to be a point of contention. It's like, all right, well, for the players, it's like, can I, outside of like 6 teams, like nobody seems to be willing to budge on that. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of extended free agency and stuff like that. And as you talked about, like the revenue sharing, it is kind of weird because are they arguing with themselves? But
well, so here's my big question: is what are the Players Association? Excuse me. What is the Players Association wanting from this collective bargaining agreement? Are they simply just going to want to increase what the minimum salary is for players, or like, where is it that they're going to be the bargaining side. Because, yeah, everything we mentioned about is money, but everything has always been the owners trying to figure things out, and the Players Association will most likely say no from every standpoint. They don't care about probably the revenue sharing, whatever gets them the money. Salary cap will probably scare them because they're afraid that therefore players won't get as much money as teams try to keep their overall budgets within the cap. And when it comes to deferrals, players are probably huge for the deferrals because there's less of a chance they're going to get as much money if deferrals stop. So if those are the main talking points, what do the players want that could maybe try to balance out? Otherwise, is it just going to be a whole lot of the owners wanting something the players are like, no?
Well, do you think they would argue for just a salary floor? To be like, hey, your teams need to, you as an owner need to spend money.
I mean, the only what if a collective bargaining agreement happens, it's because the Players Association agreed on a floor that they are happy with, where they think then a majority of the players can get a good signing. But even then, I still feel like they're more behind how they can change the market for future generations. So they care more about the future than about honestly the everyday man right now. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Doing a quick Google search, the salary cap issue seems to be the main.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I'm just curious about what the Players Association wants out of the next agreement. That's the thing. Is
I just think again the disparity and what teams are spending is got to be like. I would imagine if you're the players, you have to want to push for that because, again, you're going to be getting more opportunity and potentially more money if you make these owners spend. And again, I don't know if that's just trying to get a floor, a salary cap floor. But again, if they do that, the owners are going to come back and say, "Hey, we want a cap." So it's always going to come back to the salary cap. And I think for a while that's kind of, I mean, we've talked about it. We've done whole shows about, why the MLB should have a salary cap.
So I guess I guess that's what it is. Because I mean, quick search, yeah, it said the main thing was going to be salary cap. It says MLB Players Association is expecting to negotiate for a salary cap. So my assumption is really just going to be then, I guess, if that maybe, believe it or not, we are going to get a salary cap. But the way that this negotiation is going to go is the owners are going to pick the they're just going to be off when it comes to the figures of what that range is, like what is the ceiling and what's the floor, and that's going to be, I guess, what could push this for a while.
Yeah, because you're going to have the Dodgers saying, "Hey, the cap should be $5 billion," and you're going to have the Pirates saying, "Hey, it should be 25 cents." That's going to be the issue. So,
well, there's also probably going to be ways they're going to try to squeeze things out and be like, it's a cap, but it has to do with what you do in 3 years or something. It's not going to be a 1 year solution.
Yeah,
it is not going to be the way that we.
Or it's going to be like a 2 or 3. Yeah, it's going to be like a 2 or 3 year like transition from your current budget to what it ends up being. And by the time you're kind of set on what the quote unquote cap will be, it'll be ready to argue for another collective bargaining agreement. So,
well, I mean, in a way, you kind of have to do that. You have to give a transition period because you have teams like the Dodgers who have this deferred money that as soon as the salary cap goes into effect, they're going to be like, oh.
I mean, my guess is the cap is going to max out, and is probably going to max out at 300. The owners would probably try to push for 350 or 4, but 300 is realistically where it could potentially max out. But the floor in that case is probably going to be like 200, and that's where you're going to get like half of the league, 2/3 of the league that are going to be like either we want massive revenue sharing or we need to drop that. And so that's where the bouncing around is going to be most likely. Then it's going to be like 150 versus 250 as the ceiling, in which case you're going to have literally every big market in baseball being like, no, because all their money is above that. And they're going to be like, well, then we do nothing. So I guess if that's really what it is, then the next collective bargaining agreement comes down to what is a salary cap range going to be. That could take a while as they try to figure out what's okay in the terms of how long it takes to transition to whatever the cap and floor is, or what the penalties are, at least in the near future. Because maybe that's what it is. Maybe they implement it immediately, but they increase the penalties rather rapidly, so they're minor the first year if you're over it because you were kind of stuck in this situation. But then after that, it increases more and more quickly, so that you have to.
But they did that with
third year.
I don't know. I mean, it'd have to be drastic though, because they were like, "Oh, the luxury tax this, the luxury tax that. It's harsher, blah blah blah, whatever." And like teams are still not giving a shit. So,
I mean, the luxury a salary cap penalty will just be a lot harsher eventually than the salary cap situation. My guess is if they were to start with a salary cap, if the salary cap goes in place, the first year of you being over would be similar to what it is now when it comes to how money is the main thing that's like what you have to pay on like a tax or something. And by about year 3 or 4, whatever they decide is the end of this transition period, then it becomes like losing draft picks or losing position, like certain things that
it's not money.
really more crucial. I'm trying to remember what I saw in other sports as what it is, or you lose certain permissions of like looking at like international signings or something that could really hinder the future of an organization or at least building an organization.
If they do implement it like that, then that could potentially flip MLB literally on its head in terms of the big market teams that have these massive contracts. They're going to be in trouble because you have, in terms of a salary cap, say if it's 300 million, just thrown out there, you have the Dodgers who are going to be paying Shohei till he's 80, $2 million per year. But then you also have teams like the Phillies who owe Harper how much per year at this point?
25. It's like 25.
Yeah, so that's a huge chunk of your salary.
That's the thing. So right now there's only there's 2 or 3 teams over 300 million, I think, right now. The Phillies, Dodgers, it might be the Mets, I'm not sure.
They are now.
I'm seeing my video was lagging. I was like waiting for it to stop. Outside, but if you look at those teams specifically, Dodgers have the mega salaries that they've given out to a lot of people and all these deferrals. So that's a very kind of like specific situation. You have the Mets that gave all this money to Soto, and the Phillies have just a lot of $20-30 million people. So they're kind of very specific teams to pull out. Everyone else is under that 300. I don't think it takes as much as you think for those 3 teams in what would be the 3-year transition phase to drop below that 300 mark and still be very competitive. And at least from a Dodgers standpoint too, as it's been seen for a while, they still have a fantastic farm system where regardless where they end up draft wise, they always seem to be able to pluck out good prospects and develop them well in the system. So I don't think it's going to hurt them as much as you think, just because of what the 3 years will do. It's just whether it stops them completely from making certain signings. That's where maybe, but at that point that we're going to be in 2030, and who knows what baseball is going to be like then. Rob Manfred will be gone. We'll be rejoicing.
I don't think he will be.
I'll ask this question.
2029 is it. Once his contract's up, he's already said he's done. So it's 2028 or 29, he's gone.
I'll ask this because I think it kind of goes hand in hand. The problem is if you tackle the salary cap issue with what teams have seen now, do you then have to pivot right away to, hey, we got to talk about deferred contracts? Because once we put a salary cap in place, deferred contracts are going to be even worse than they are now. Every team's going to be doing it. Teams 100%. Are going to be finding loopholes to, again, stay under the cap by doing
that. Teams should already be doing it.
Deferrals are an interesting discussion. All right, so question is, all right, let's take Ohtani. He is, obviously, his contract is deferred in a way where he's going to get $2 million for the first 10 years and $68 million for the next 10 years. But from a luxury tax standpoint, its value was considered what, 42 million or something.
Yeah, 42. Yeah, something like that.
That 42 is only affecting the 10 years he's playing, right? It's not referring to the 68 million that eventually they're going to pay those 10 years after, right? So, I mean, deferring contracts will affect, like in a Shohei situation, how much is the luxury taxes work, but 42 million is still enough where if you take this Dodgers team right now, obviously if you took Shohei Ohtani off the table, they would be overall under a 300 ceiling. Or you keep Shohei and you had to force yourself to not make as many extra signings, and you probably wouldn't have done as much as you did this offseason. So I don't know if it hurts it as much as we think, or if it will have as big of effect. I think it's just, I was reading an article recently on MLB trade rumors. It was from someone, I believe, that is either now or last was in like the Mets front office, and he was talking about how the issue with the deferral situation right now is it's not having quite as big of an impact as people think on teams when it comes to luxury tax stuff. It's more about the perception of what the fans see versus what's actually happening. I don't necessarily agree with all the points the article was saying, but I do think that what we're facing right now is kind of a perception issue of all these things are going on, and the Dodgers are just exploiting a system that is allowing them to do it. So they're not breaking any rules. It's just that since no one else is doing it, it feels off and wrong. I don't know if there's really any way it'll necessarily bite back without things changing, but I don't think that. But if we put a salary cap, I don't think that the deferrals will necessarily help as much as you think they might. It might save you 10 million, but not like enough where
I don't know though.
That huge a factor.
I feel like you have to put a limit on how many deferred contracts a team can have or something, because like in theory you can defer your whole roster and be like, okay, obviously you're going to pay that money back, but like, if you're trying to stay under a salary cap, you can sign contracts that are strictly deferred, and that's where I think like, okay, you fix one problem, you bring in a salary cap, but then you have a whole different problem, and it's amplified.
I guess. Well, here's the thing with deferrals. So what? So the Dodgers right now have about $1 billion in referrals that will be paid over X periods of time at different points based on how these contracts are. The question, I guess, could be too is, all right, if we go to also a salary cap, a big thing is revenue sharing. So suddenly now you're going to have your big 5 market teams or whatever that are going to be sharing a lot of their profit with other teams based on what the new limit will be from a maximum and floor for the cap. So the could affect the Dodgers more than we realize in the future when it comes to spending, and that's part of, you really won't know the effect it has until Shohei has done his contract and we're in 2040 and we don't really know what the heck to expect with anything. But I don't know if that's something. There's a lot of factors that I feel like we may or may not be an issue, but we won't really know. It's just a matter of seeing how things play out in the meantime and then what the effect seems to be afterwards. If this was like a 5-year situation, like 2 years, after 2 years, certain players were going to be leaving, and then all of a sudden this boatload of money was going to be like part of the payout, that's a different situation, because I know it's not going to be credited towards luxury tax stuff, that like 68 million that Shohei has and then the billion total, but it's still money the team is going to have to pay people. So I mean, if they're already having to give 100 million, let's say a year for 10 years to certain players, and then they're going to have to give, let's say, another 100 million out to other teams, if not 200 million because of revenue sharing or something, then suddenly if you're, let's say what you got in a year was 600 million, gets dropped down to like 300, 400 million, and you know you're already spending at least 300 million of that towards your roster, and you might have to spend a little extra in penalties if you choose to be over a year or so, and that doesn't count necessarily coaches and other stuff. Suddenly what you're getting revenue wise is a whole lot less. And now it doesn't necessarily seem like it's really was beneficial. It was great in the moment, but suddenly in the future, you're affecting the team. And because of if the salary cap wasn't a thing and the revenue sharing wasn't going to be as bad, that's a different discussion because then there's less money they're giving up. But it's money as a whole is I think what needs to get looked at in that case than just luxury tax.
So is the solution then, okay, you can defer contracts. We don't care when you pay your players, but even if you defer a contract, you still have to pay that value we're talking about. So if Shohei's contract is 2 million, 2 million, 2 million.
I mean, I agree with that.
Like, would it be all right, you're still accounting for 42 million is what you're paying. Like, that's your salary cap hit.
Well, so the two ways I'd be okay with it in the Shohei situation is if you say they get charged luxury tax wise 42 years over that 20 years, or if they say maybe it's 68 million over 10 years. And maybe the team gets to choose. Maybe part of it is that you get to choose. Do you want to get charged the full luxury tax of like if there were no deferrals now for the length of the contract, or do you want the minimized over the longer period? Because honestly, if he takes the smaller amount over the longer period, it's going to be more overall, but it affects them less in that season.
Yeah.
So they get out of the hole quicker, but they may not be able to sign as many players to back up Shohei. But in the long term, it might be like, all right, we can get more players to help Shohei in his prime. And then when Shohei's done, we're still stuck for 40 million over the next 10 years. I'd be okay with something like that so that there is a bit more of a penalty to it. But also, if you're going to have all these other teams that can now, or not just can, but have to pay to reach that floor, then suddenly maybe it's not going to be an issue with the deferrals and stuff because, I mean, yeah, the Dodgers did it because of getting all these players. And I think also part of it is just everyone wants to play with Shohei.
Yeah.
At this point. So he's the greatest baseball player of all time. And if he's not yet, he's going to be. He's the greatest baseball player at all time. Let's just be honest.
I
just heard a million old man voices just scream out in terror.
I think
Shohei basically has to blow out his arm next year to have a shot of not being the greatest because he's being an effective pitcher and an effective player.
Look at Babe Ruth's stats.
He was playing against janitors.
Ohtani is still turning out to be a better hitter and pitcher. I mean, not hitter overall,
If he would have continued to pitch,
but pitcher.
Who knows?
There's a lot of things that
look at his overall ERA.
John, I hope you get a stroke acting like that.
Look, so I think that there's a lot of reasons, as we kind of said, you want to do a salary cap from multiple standpoints. From a league standpoint, you can potentially cut costs on certain players if you have a cap. From a player standpoint, you have a floor, so you can get paid. And I think from an entertainment standpoint, a salary cap creates that entertainment because, like that's what fans want. That's what fans, Michael Conforto signed with the Dodgers, which people forget about, by the way. He signed with them for 1 year for like 20 for shits and giggles, man. Like he didn't need to go there. And like that's what we're trying to avoid. I mean, look, if you sign your superstar players, that's whatever. But like the fact that you can go out and just sign these guys is the part where I think is the problem. So when you're talking about a salary cap, okay, they fix that, or that's something they propose in the CBA, the new CBA. I just feel like you have to immediately pivot and say, well, here's the other thing. We have to tackle this because we know if we do the salary cap and the salary floor, it's going to get out of control with this. Will teams find ways to exploit it? Absolutely. That's what sports teams do. In the NHL, cap circumvention has been a topic for years now, right? Like it's that teams will find a way. My whole thing is the reason I think this could go on for so long as a lockout is, okay, if they solve one problem, are they going to be like, all right, let's try this? Or are they going to realize we have so many money problems on our hands right now that if we change one thing, we got to also change this. So does that mean nothing gets done, or does that mean, hey, this gets done, but it's over a long period of time? I guess that's the question that you'd have to say. But pivoting a little bit here, Will, you were talking about like, all right, so like what else could they be potentially doing? Because we're all talking about like money and stuff like that. Like, what's another thing the CBA could have in it with this new agreement.
The only thing I thought about ahead of time that could be brought up are robo-umps.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, they're going to be a part of spring training this year. Probably going to be nothing in 2026 except for more spring training stuff. And then my assumption is it'll be brought up in discussion as part of the next collective bargaining agreement. No, before this episode, I have something I would like to be done in baseball.
Right.
I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a bargaining thing or one of the like committee decisions, and I don't think it's going to happen. It's more of a gripe with one thing I have in baseball and something that I'd be fine doing so it doesn't happen. And the big thing is I'm tired. I'm done with the whole position players pitching. I'm done with it. It was a novel thing in like it was the novel thing in the 2000s or 2010s because you'd be in extra innings, your team would run out of pitching, you'd have Joe Schmo pitch 5 innings in relief, and suddenly you needed someone that could close a game or help you get through it near the end. And that's where you get like your pitcher in left field and your center fielders on the mound. And that was fun and exciting because not only like the game went on so long that you were like, you had to get to this point. So it was almost like you encouraged it. And then suddenly it became the Moneyball sabermetric choice of we're in a blowout. We want to save pitching. So we're going to use our position players during these types of games so that we can save the pitching in the long haul. And then the rosters were expanded to 26 and then nothing changed. And then last year they made the adjustment about when you could bring position players into the games. And while, yes, it was cut down, it still happened a lot and I hate it. So
those damn analytics, man.
Sabermetrics is great in how it's helped the small market teams compete with the big boys, even though it hasn't really resulted in a World Series, or at least not where it comes to like the really, really small market teams. If a big market team use sabermetrics somehow, good for you, I guess, but you also use money. So what I want is basically it's a two-part thing. The first is that I don't want position players allowed to be used unless the game is in extra innings. That's the first start. Like no blowouts. I don't care. Or first time you can use a pitcher is the 10th inning if you want. But that's what it is. Now, of course, the side of it is that, well, then if you're worried about pitching health or whatever, is one of two options is my plan or part B to this plan is that either you expand rosters to 28 players or you change the maximum amount of pitchers you can have on a roster from 13 to 14. I don't care what it is.
I think you should. I think rosters should be expanded.
I'm fine if rosters get expanded to 28 and then you say the cap is then 14 because right now it's 13 and because that's half of your position players. Yeah. I'm fine if it's 20. I'm fine if it's 30. I honestly don't really care.
Yeah,
how much you want to do. It's just that I don't want to see the position players out there. I want to see the pitchers go and like try to, you sign the pitchers to pitch and get you in these situations. Shut up. I'm still talking and I don't want old man arguments from hypothetical situations. So I want the situation of like part of the challenge of a regular season is that your team does have blowouts. And so you need pitchers that can get you through the blowouts. And maybe you have some guys step up and can eat up 3 innings so that it doesn't hurt your bullpen instead of you trying to use 4 guys at the back end to get out of this nightmare game. Like that's just part of the challenge of baseball. And it's absolutely destroyed when it comes to position players. It's just such a bore to watch. I get it if it were to happen a handful of times a season, but this happens a handful of times, sometimes a night. Now it's probably more of a week. But like that's what's stupid. No, it's too much. Like if you want to go anything integrity in the game, that is the biggest flaw. I'd rather than throw a white flag on the field and everyone get out.
I think we had this conversation about expanding rosters when we were talking about pitching injuries. I think that's something that should happen regardless of if position players are pitching or not. That roster should get expanded. You should have more pitchers. I agree. It was fun for a while, but I don't want to it's an 8-1 game.
I don't need Garrett Stubbs to have the 5th most pitching appearances on my team.
And it's funny too, because again, before it was all right, it's 16-2. Throw in, the center fielder. Now it's it's literally it's 8-1, and we give up. It's like we're putting a position player in. Are we serious? What?
It's playing the long game the wrong way.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, one thing that I want to caveat off of that is they need to change this BS with the postseason where you expand your roster in September to then shrink it back down. It's like, no, can
You
I
only
keep these
gain
guys?
2 players now in September. It's not enough. I mean, if you were arguing back in the day when it was going up to 40,
that was crazy.
But that's not the point. The point is like you automatically like
those 40-man rosters.
you make somebody expand their roster.
Stop yawning.
Excuse me. Sorry. It's late here on the East Coast. Anyway,
no, it's not. It's 4:00 in the morning. We're doing great.
Then it's early.
Yes. I can hear the birds in my ear.
So I just think that's one of the things that is dumb about the MLB season. It's like you make us expand the roster, but now you make us shrink it back down. It's like
I'm fine with that. Plus, with playoffs, you really are gaining kind of an extra pitcher when it comes to how you approach each round because you don't need a 5-man roster or 5-man rotation to get you through the playoffs. You only need a 4-man rotation max. And even a couple rounds, you can get by with a 3, which means you therefore get 1 or 2 extra bullpen arms. So I don't have any issue with that. I do kind of wish they brought back the 40-man rosters for September. I honestly don't have any issue with teams carrying those guys during the entire month. And I kind of find it fun when your team is clinched and they want to give people a rest. And so you have a bunch of no names at that point, and you're kind of seeing how guys out. Plus, it gives players more of a chance that they're going to get some major league action, and that's what they want in the end.
Yeah.
They might impress someone, and that leads to something next year.
That is the one good thing about it. And especially like, I've been in a lot of situations where my team hasn't clinched because they've been 40 games out of it, but they get to bring their top prospects up at that time and like a bunch of them. So that was cool, but
yeah.
Before we change topic, before we end this video, I do want to shift to the fans' perspective of what a lockout could mean. Tyler, if it turns out to be a lockout like you're predicting, I don't think baseball can, handle that without having to claw its way up for the next 10 to 15 years.
ESPN's going to start covering beer leagues, and that's how they get through the year.
MLW wiffle, baby. Let's go. Okay. So, Will, you asked the question to me. Like, do you see this lockout having, like, are we going to be missing games because of this lockout?
Potential lockout over 232 days.
I don't even, like, do you think it gets resolved early enough where the season isn't, like, screwed up, essentially?
If I had to go with my gut, what I think it would happen is that it will be still a couple months, but it would not affect regular season games. It might affect spring training.
So that's what I was kind of getting to. Like, does it roll into the regular season?
I would say that there's a lockout for December and probably half or so of January, and then by the end of January, they've agreed on whatever the terms are, so that things open up in February, and maybe spring training games start like a week later than they usually do. So it's more like March 1st. But other than that, like pitchers and catchers still report when they usually do. You have your last minute signings happen over that span of that month. But
I keep mixing up in my head the lockout, the last one we had versus the 2020 COVID like arguments where baseball was postponed.
The COVID stuff was absolutely stupid.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like in my head, I keep thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, I think it could be like last time there was a lockout where we lose half the season. No, we lost half the season because of COVID.
Well, I think people were fearing the lockout in 21-22 is going to be a lot worse than it ended up being because of how the 2020 COVID situation was handled. Now, that was a whole different situation too because, well, there was a different situation because, I mean, everyone's health was the main point of focus. Like really the players union had absolutely no power in that situation. It was 100% the owners just saying when they'd be willing to open their doors so they could wait as long as they physically wanted to. So now the players association is going to have something that they can argue against. So it's a bit more even match in how it'll go. I think for the sake of, you know what, Rob Manfred doesn't probably care about his legacy. Do what the heck you want for your last collective bargaining agreement. Just don't put baseball in the gutter.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, is that he's going to do that, because baseball there's a huge gap between the other members of the Big Four, being baseball, hockey, and basketball, and football. There's a huge gap there.
So I'm going to do something I never do. I'm going to have to defend Rob Manfred here. Because so here's the thing. I hate Rob Manfred. I hated everything.
I'm afraid to go outside the building.
I hate Rob Manfred. I hate how he's a terrible face for baseball. He's a terrible spokesperson. He does not know how to handle criticism or the camera well. In the end, he is just a spokesperson for the owners. That's what he is. He is the voice of the owners and stuff like this. So a lot of the gripe we have with him in the end will come down to our feelings towards how the owners are running things. And with the new commissioner, it's not going to change that much. He's just going to vocalize what the owners are saying, and then he's going to go out there. The problem is, in his case, is that he just does not know how to take any type of criticism or any type of rejection, because he feels like it's uncalled for.
Well, when you come up with ideas like, hey, you can have somebody bat twice in a row, a rule change.
Well, here's the thing. He is not the one that actually is coming up with them. The owners are feeding that through him, which he is then sharing and trying to push on to see how it is. I don't think he woke up one day and was like, this is how I'm going to ruin baseball today.
Yeah, but he decided to go on camera and say that.
Oh, yeah. And he said something, but in the end,
he also degraded his own trophy.
Spokesperson for the owners.
Let's get kinky on the show. Let's do a little role play here for a second. I'm an MLB owner. Just pick any MLB owner. And,
I'm not because you're a virus.
You're Rob Manfred. Rob, I have an amazing idea. We're gonna introduce a rule. What was it? The Golden Batter Rule. What was the official name of it?
Oh my God. Golden
Batter Rule. Rob, I got this great idea. It's a Golden Batter Rule where once a game, a team can pick, and it doesn't matter if they batted before or whenever, they can be chosen to bat at any specific moment in time. What are your thoughts?
You know what's crazy about that? Like, imagine I
think enough teams were interested.
Bases loaded, Dodgers.
Why?
Bases loaded, Dodgers.
Because they want Shohei to bat more.
Well, that's what I'm about to say.
Oh, yes.
One out.
Every team who's not the Dodgers wants Shohei to bat twice in a row. Yep.
Shohei comes up to the plate, one out, he strikes out. It's like, damn, we got their best player out. Nope, you're back up. Walk off grand slam. Like that's
why they want them. Yeah, it's a dumb rule. It's absolutely
going to be such
rule.
a dumb shit thing where, like, you know how like intentional walk, get the manager holding up the four. It's going to be like him coming out raising his fist, like something really showboaty. Like, oh yeah, motherfucker, he's batting again. Like, he's just going to walk right back from the dugout. He's going to turn right around and just get back into his stance.
He just walks out flipping the bird.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, I want them to.
He goes in one set of dugout steps and then comes out the other.
No, this is what I want. I want them to physically hold a golden bat if they were to do that. So therefore, it's the golden bat rule.
It's a
if the bat breaks, then they're automatically out because he broke the golden bat.
I have an idea. We give them aluminum bats for the golden bat.
Oh God, no! I don't want Shohei to kill little Timmy in the 8th row of the 4th deck because he didn't think there was any shot he'd get a ball.
Shohei would hit a ball 800
going
feet.
Down the baseline are not going to help you. Not anymore.
Fucking 140 exit velo.
The reason why I wanted to do the role play is because why is Rob Manfred's freaking first response not, are you guys fucking serious? Or am I being punked?
Well, here's what I want to know. Was that his response, or was his response like, I think you got something there, Johnny?
Yeah, well,
enough to a point where he felt like, you know what, I'm gonna go in public and I'm gonna state this, and
which is why I'm curious how many owners actually thought about it. That's why I'm curious.
Yeah, and you got to be like, Tyler, what do we say?
He also could be clueless. He might not be able to be like
a group of people got together
and said this is a great idea. And I have to picture myself as Rob at that table. I have to look around and be like, wait, really? Like, out of all the problems that we have in 2 years, this is it? This is what we're talking about.
This will
No,
say
Rob
baseball.
Manfred. He's probably the type of guy that if one of the owners was like, "Hey, if so and so jumped off a bridge, would you do it?" And he'd go, "When and where?"
Yeah,
Bro, dude, think about this. CBA negotiations in 2 years or 1 year. It's going to be like, okay, listen, we'll give you the salary cap, but we got to do the golden batter rule.
that's a tipping point.
That's it right there. That is the
But
final
my whole thing
negotiation.
was, regardless of the whole Manfred situation about how this is going to be an argument, there's always going to be that argument from the owners or whatever. So even if Manfred leaves and we criticize some of that stuff, the next wave of whoever the commissioner will be is going to get the same stuff from the owners. We're still going to have that fight when it comes to all these bargaining agreements and whatever.
So the next guy is also going to get shit on for
They all do.
Yeah. Well,
people hate Roger Goodell.
To be a walking like projectile like target that's just what you are. It's like, hit me with a tomato, I dare you.
Yeah, I mean, again, moral of the story for this one, I think that there's going to be some tough talks.
Does MLB struggle after this lockout if it's a long lockout?
MLB's already struggling.
Define struggle. Like
right.
what is
worse than what it is now? Like
that's
like
not specific.
Fans,
what is struggle?
Like it takes them 10 to 15 years to get it back, to get attendance and viewership numbers back to what they are now. Attendance,
no. Viewership, maybe.
I don't know.
Hot take. Attendance is very much more a team issue than it is a league issue.
Right. You're still going to have whatever roughly that team fan base's return. Viewership.
Not to say the MLB doesn't have anything to do with it, but more often than not, live attendance has much more to do with the teams than it does the league itself.
Yeah.
TV viewership, on the other hand, we can blame the league on all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the blackouts.
Also, I'd like the collective bargaining agreement to say that I don't want any more of these goddamn national broadcasts unless I can also watch the game with my own commentators, because I'm tired of listening to A-Rod
you're never winning
that one.
for 4 hours. You're never winning that one. Every sports league under the sun.
ESPN's garbage. Oh, I know, but like we're talking about the collective bargaining agreement. This is what I want as a part of it.
Yep.
Willow's in negotiations.
I will only accept if
these are my demands. I want nothing less.
Yeah, I was gonna say you guys have it nice because all right, you have John Kruk. Of course, I'm
gonna scare this kid.
I'm gonna scare him. Like he's a national treasure.
John
of course.
Kruk,
oh my god!
Hey, we have Kevin Brown and Jim Palmer. Thank you.
Think about this for a second though. Like John
Kruk is literally just a podcast talking about
did
society.
A whole piece on him. John Oliver did a whole piece on John Kruk, and it's amazing. It's
John Oliver loves the Phillies.
Musings.
No, he loved the Phillies. Remember when there was the whole thing about the Philly Fanatic, about whether it would go into the Phillies would lose the rights to it? He started doing a whole campaign about he wanted the Fanatic to be the mascot for Past Week Tonight.
Bro, hot take. We're just gonna wait until it becomes public domain, then we're gonna have problems.
Dude, he loved Gritty when Gritty came out. He was obsessed with Gritty for like 2 months.
Well, to be fair, who wasn't?
I know, but still, my point is he loves Philly sports.
Philly didn't like him until he threatened the Pittsburgh Penguins Twitter account. That's literally the only thing that got the
dude. He got announced, and we were like, "What the hell is this? Like, what are we doing?" A group of people got together, and this is what they came up with. That is all for us here at Big League Breakdowns. Find us on Twitter at BL_breakdowns. Big League Breakdowns everywhere else. Again, check out our oh my god, I messed it up now. Around the League in 30 days is coming up later this month. We have a couple more things content-wise, but make sure you like the video. If you liked it, subscribe for all that good content coming up.
If you didn't like it, subscribe anyway. We need it.
Yeah, we
hit that like button.
And hit that like button. Smash that like button. We'll see you next time.
And comment.
And wear your seatbelt.
Comment below to wear your seatbelt.